So we are on. Hello, planet Earth.
Hello from California.
Hello from Japan. And this is episode I don't even know. And I also don't know what this podcast is called. And what are we doing?
The usual. I think that's the title of this podcast. I don't know what this podcast is called. I called it something different every time. And I think actually the last one you did book pod or something like that. It was I thought that was a winner. I thought that was a good one.
All right. It's book pod episode something.
9,
and,
just about 9 or 10.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yep.
And this is my choice. Whilst I was enjoying the New Yorker podcast, I heard of this author called Sir Victor Sawdon Pritchett. And he was a short story writer and critic and other things.
Travel writer, biographer.
Yeah, all those other words that you can attach to multiply your job as, writer.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you think?
Okay, so I found them. The first word that these are selected stories that have been published before. He's very prolific. He's written all kinds of things, biographies, short stories, novels that were not very successful. He's done a lot of travel writing, and he's what they call, as we looked at some YouTube videos of him from the Thames talk show. He is a man of letters. He is a gentleman writer, and he calls himself kind of a compulsive writer or something like that. The result, I think, is that he spreads himself very thin, and the stories, while they're interesting, they're not very deep. They are sort of extended snapshots of middle-class life in maybe the 50s in England, and I found them a little bit interesting, but not very good. I think he likes to write, and I think he's in love with writing. He likes to tell stories, but they're not very deep. There's not a lot of substance there.
I could not disagree more.
All righty then. We have a real discussion on our hands.
I was riveted with
oh, no kidding.
most of them. And some of them going back over my notes, I have to read them again because it's almost like he just has these characters, parents, sisters, cousins, kids running around London flats and streets and buses and trolleys, just hanging around each other. And but I was thinking how I've heard Quentin Tarantino talk about he's a filmmaker, but he loves books. His favorite writer is Elmore Leonard. And I thought from his speaking, I felt a writer can so influence a filmmaker, about shots and angles and perspectives and stuff like that. And so I was thinking about that a lot with this, about all these short stories have these maneuvers that I think he's trying to just kind of figure out, kind of if an essay is where a writer tries to figure out an idea of what do I think about something, then it was almost like these short stories were kind of essays in maneuvering or managing or just being with somebody and then just seeing how it unfolds. Not so much the linearity of what happens to a person, but just how he can keep it kind of compelling of just being with a person. And that's why I thought because Tarantino does that. All his movies he shoots he likes accents and slang and costumes and like sets. It's almost like those are half of his movies. Always like his like thoroughness of, how much are you hanging out with these people or something? Or maybe he's spoken about that. Though, yeah, his stories are always so crazy and like his stories might be like pulpy, but
Yes.
how
Yes.
detailed he is about everything
Detailed.
else
Yes.
is what like validates his
He sees tree upon tree upon tree upon tree without seeing a forest. There's no big picture. There's only detail. And I think this guy is very similar.
Yeah, I like that.
In fact, while I was reading it, I thought of you, and I thought, oh, you're going to tell me how this is like Seinfeld, that you have this group of characters that are, thrown together and what's going on. He likes to tell the story, and he likes to be, and he's not economical with his language in any way, shape, or form. It is detail laden, but the story, where's the story? The story is, they just went together. They were together for a while, and then he had this great passion, and then, she threw him over for her former husband. Or, then they had this great passion, and then she ultimately said, well, no, because I like this older guy. And then he had this great passion. So I found it so varied. Every story is about different kinds of people, yet the characters, it's not character driven because the characters don't really do much. They don't have any profound epiphanies or anything like that. It's just a kind of series of details in their being parallel with each other.
Yeah, that is good.
That's what you like. Okay, well, it's very observational. That's what I thought, and so that's why I thought of Jerry Seinfeld. It's very detail laden. It's very varied. Lots of different kinds of stories about kind of different people. I also found it very adult. It was very grown up in its, what people thought and did. But it just, they just didn't move me at all.
Well, let's go through it. So there were 14 stories. How about, do you want to choose one or any one that you liked first, or what should we do?
Okay, so I did, of course I did read all of them. And I thought that actually the most interesting, let me look at this. I thought the most interesting was Cage Birds, about the two sisters.
Oh, really? Huh.
One rich and one poor, except that these are sort of costumes that they've each put on. The rich sister is not truly rich, and she has to. You're right about these people making maneuvers. A lot of the stories are very transactional. The interactions between the characters is, what can I get out of this, or you give me this and I'll give you that. But I found that really sad that one woman had to live on her wits to get everything she could, and then she invited her sister over annually and gave her fancy clothes, which the sister sold. And the reason the sister sold the clothes is because her husband had, in his cheapness, frugality, penny pinchingness, had influenced her to such a degree that she actually got pleasure out of that. And he's a penny pinching person, and he influenced her to such a degree that she would use her interactions with her sister, whom she deeply resented, to get clothes so that she could sell them. I found that one really, really sad. And I also liked The Skeleton, and I am of a certain age, I must say. And I thought that The Skeleton was pretty interesting.
Yep. Oh boy. Yeah, I actually didn't have much to think about with the sisters one, but now that you mention it, I am remembering how in the New Yorker podcast, one of the things they said is how V.S. Pritchett, he for the time or whatever, he had a certain knack for writing women or writing their perspective or something, and so that seems like a common thread through the stories of like traditional woman and like modern woman. And women of course had or have still a more rigid, if you want to be modern, you got to compromise things or whatever the tradition is and use what you got to get what you want or get ahead, and who cares if you're scamming certain people. And so in a past story, the modern woman is kind of suspected and shamed or kind of like what but yeah, when you mention it, that one about the sisters, one sister's kind of scamming her way
through life,
gathering wealth and using her asset, which is her like charm and
her body,
her like projection of herself. But then this other sister who's married and like locked down with this son and the cheapo, I wrote down a really so the guy says, "Oh wow, that's good. Well, hey, take it off. You'd better get it off. You'll mark it cooking."
Mm-hmm.
So in about a gold dress that the traditional sister had gotten from the scamming sister, and it says she gave a last look at herself in the mirror. She despised her husband. She remembered the look of admiration on the face of the man in her sister's flat.
Mm-hmm.
She took off the dress and pulled her woolen one out of the case and put it on.
Mm-hmm.
The golden woman had gone.
Yeah.
And so she, for a moment, like ached for something
more than she had.
And that's it. And that's what I thought how maybe this also compels to me too, because that's what like songs are. Just like, hey, here's like a few minutes of a someone.
Yeah.
And that's all you get. And then so that's the way I think I liked these two.
I thought that story was very compelling. The two sisters could be described as one is loose and one is tight. The loose one, she lives by marrying rich people or attracting rich men, getting money from them, and she lives a high life, but it's a facade because she's always scrambling for money. But the tight sister, she wasn't originally tight, skinflint. She's been influenced by her husband, and everything is zeroed in. I feel so sorry for the son who's going to grow up the same way and be influenced and think that he's always a burden to his parents because he's costing them money. And the tight sister describes herself as always being the prettier one, but the loose sister was flashy. And the tight sister did the right thing, got married, what's expected of a woman in that day and age, any day and age, really. And she just sort of, dug her own grave getting into this marriage and making this annual trip that her sister, gives her clothes just for a bit of, I don't know, there's no affection. There's just sort of family. Maybe this loose sister would like to have some kind of relationship with her sister, but it's all transactional. It's all, you come here, okay, you spend some time with me and I give you clothes, and then you sell them. You don't value them in any way. I thought that was really sad.
I think she's like kind of in on it. I think she knows that she gets men buy her stuff, and then she's like, well, I'm not going to like, I have to get rid of it so that the next guy I like scam sees that I'm without. So who am I gonna dispose of these two? So she just like, passes them to the sister.
But I think she sort of pays for these familial visits by giving her clothes, and she doesn't have to. She could throw them away for the next man. She could go and she could donate them. She could give them to the jumble sale. There's all kinds of things she could have done, but she does make the effort to let her sister know, I'm in town, come and see me. I have something for you. And so it's an enticement for the tight sister who lives this really gray, dull life, in which she's just been infected with this stinginess. So I think it's a way for the flashy sister to sort of buy a little bit of affection, maybe, that she thinks is maybe more genuine than what she gets from all the men in her life, because after all, they knew each other when. I don't know. It's just really an awful relationship.
Well, when they get to the apartment, I wrote that a maid opens the door, and so then you're like, oh, okay, here we go. We got the like contrast is coming, and her name. She changed her name to Augusta, and she keeps pointing. Look at the curtains. Hey, check out the sheets. Hey, did I show you the bedspread? Like, she wants to show, like, look, I'm good too.
Yes.
Never mind how I got it. So she wants to be recognized as like, look what I got, which is important to own stuff. But how else was I supposed to get it? Like, we either poor or women, you have to marry rich into a guy.
Right.
But we couldn't do that. You couldn't do that. So look, I did it. I got it. But then it's embarrassing when another guy comes over. I don't know what that was about.
Yeah, because she gets gifts from them. So, she's acquisitive. She wants things. She wants things that's a sign of wealth, just the same way that the stingy husband wants them to save money so that they have more. It's just, and both of them, they're not true to themselves. I think it's a facade. She's aware that it's a facade. They both are, but then they resent each other. It was awful. I didn't like it.
Another little mini thing is that she changed her name to Augusta, which I thought of when Julius Caesar named his nephew Octavian as his heir. He also changed his name to Augustus or something. So maybe she's
Caesar
like,
Augustus.
I'm the king.
Yeah, it's a heightened, because her name is what, Elsie?
Yeah.
Something that you name your cow. And so it is an elevation. Names are really important. And that is an elevation that she chose for herself. She's trying to remake herself, I think.
So the one that when I was reading this and I thought, oh boy, we got a live one here, is the one called Blind Love, about the woman.
That was very weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, they got another modern woman, Mrs. Johnson, who's working with this dude, Mr. Armitage, who's a blind lawyer, who's independently wealthy, but still a legit man of society, and but they both have a weird past where she's divorced, which is enough. Like, your life is you wasted your chance, and he is blind and had a wife who left when he started going blind, and is pitied and is or praised for his like cleverness at being almost normal, or how much he can do though not normal, and which he doesn't like, and and so it's kind of they work together. He's had other assistants. One of them stole from him, one of them wanted to like marry him, and other stuff, but Miss Johnson, I guess, or is it
Mrs.? She's been married, so it's probably Mrs.
Yeah, and she works with him because it's kind of this like separate, I don't know, just like a partnership. And then then it's lots of explaining. I thought, and this is where I thought, like, oh, this is some pretty funny stuff, where in this story they're talking about this client who he has, and you're still kind of confused, like, what's going on here, and they're talking about Armitage's client, and they get a letter from him that's all a block of text, like no spaces, like nothing. Like, you're like, what the hell is this? And he says, she says, there isn't a single full stop in this letter, a full page on both sides, none. And all his words are joined together. It's like one word, 2 pages long. And I was like, what? And then he says, is that so? I'm afraid he has an unpunctuated moral sense. And I'm like, wait, what the hell? What are we talking about here? And so, and that was just so puzzling. That meant he has no spaces, no separation, or no hesitations in his morality or something. I was like, and this is where the first time I was like, what is this writer trying to like suggest to me? And then I was kept going with the story where, what do you think? Or yeah, do you think anything about?
This story was also rather interesting, and again, one of the stories that I felt was adult. These are adults acting like adults. To tell you the truth, I don't remember that letter at all. Again, I think it was a detail that was marginal. Did it have anything to do with the main story? No, not because I didn't even recall it. But these are two people, Mrs. Johnson.
Someone needs to maybe you should spend some time with the New Yorker podcast.
This story, I thought, here are two people who are scarred in some way. She has this large birthmark that caused her, when her husband saw it for the first time, like on their wedding night, he was disgusted and threw her out, or ultimately threw her out. He couldn't stand it. It was such a horrible mark on her body that he threw her out. That is just astonishing to me. And he is scarred because he's blind. They're both sort of handicapped in each other's way. And again, it's very transactional. She's a good assistant for him because he insists on having things exactly where they should be and remain in the same place so that he can always find them, of course, because he's blind. But then the day comes that he falls into the pond or the pool on his property. And in an effort to help him, she starts pulling clothes out of the drawers or something and putting them in a different place. And he's ashamed. He loses his pride, his control over his environment, because she has upset things by putting them in the wrong place. And she recognizes that pride because that's exactly what she experienced with her ex-husband, rejecting her because she has a large birthmark on her body. And then they kind of fall in love. And, I don't... I don't
know. Well, he said she was thrown away for the only thing that she had in the traditional sense of to be like a vessel to like make babies or whatever.
Well, attract a man, for sex,
Yeah. And then, he's got full command of this life and he's got enough money to pay someone to help him out with the stuff he literally can't do. But yeah, he's humiliated because he fell, and then it's cold. She's like, you're gonna get sick, so you got to change out of that, as you would do for any human. But then she realizes like, oh, now this guy is really angry at me, but it was something I forgot to do. Like it's like she felt bad, of course, for being thrown away by that other guy, which is not her fault at all. But then now she's like, oh, this was my fault, and she like kind of owns it. But then it was the contrast was when he like makes a move on her because he's vulnerable, she's vulnerable because she finally says, oh, I screwed up, I'm humbled by my own mistake that I totally did, that I forgot to maintain, and he comes after her. She's freaked out because he approaches her, says she saw his hands begin to open and search and grope in the air as he came towards the sound of her breathing, and she couldn't move. And she's like, I think it says she feels trapped because she's used to the like kind of subtle, like she's hooked up with dudes before, like whoops, you, as people inch closer and closer towards pseudo intimacy and even marriage, where even then she was cast out. But this guy is like, I'm blind, I got no one, and I'm coming. You've seen me at my most vulnerable, and I'm still coming after you in my in the way that a blind person is imagined to get around their own life with just hands searching. And I think she's like captivated, like, whoa, this guy's really like, and she feels bad too, but then she's still confused. She doesn't know what to do. This is too weird. Yeah. But I liked how the writer wrote that he was just, I'm doing what people think blind people do. We're just looking around with our hands, touching random things. And which is the opposite of his character of being in command of everything and being so cerebral and sensitive.
And never groping. Always, never needing to grope. Yeah. To find his way.
Yeah. In like a superhuman sense.
Yeah.
Now he's in like a subhuman sense.
It was, but there was no, first of all, I didn't, the way they sort of fall into it, and there was no big, maybe it's too subtle for me, because I do find the writing very subtle, and I think probably a lot of the humor I didn't get because of the cultural differences. But he overheard her telling one of the clients he was going to go to a faith healer and try to get his eyes fixed. But he overheard her tell someone, I think the wife of the faith healer, that he was fine the way he is. I love him the way he is. And they hadn't said they loved each other to each other, but he overheard her tell someone else. And so he felt confident, or he then it was okay, sort of thing. The subtlety, I find a lot of it subtle, and I know that some of it I missed, but like I don't see the chemistry here. But they just sort of fell into it.
Yeah, this story is really crazy. This is one of the longer ones. It's like only 30 pages. But so they're like, they're kind of in an awkward state. Like the first move has been made, but they gotta, he needs to kind of move it along, as the writer does. And so then what happens is, the weird client in the beginning, who needs legal help, I guess, is just wandering around his house and just sees her like naked by the pool. And that's just like, what the hell? And she doesn't like that. And then I guess he catches wind of that, and he becomes really jealous, wanting to know about her past boyfriends and her husband, and just jealous of like, how do they get to know you and I don't get to know you? So then he does the even more ridiculous thing, which is, I think the groping hands was like out of desire, but now he's consciously being ridiculous by turning to a faith healer to rub, because he has her, she just came from church, so he says, "Oh, please, like touch my eyes as Jesus did." And before this part, he also jokes about how religion is kind of like is stupid, and going to church is stupid. But now he's like willing to try it out, and she doesn't like that. She's like, "What are you doing? This is so against your style." But he's willing to. He's consumed by this foreign, unknown territory. And then finally, they go to there, and she's like, "This is stupid," but he's gonna do it. And she has a chat with his wife,
right?
The faith guy's wife, and she admits, like, this guy. I mean, and the same thing, like, I thought this guy would be good. He's a total dipshit. We're living in this house because he's scamming this other old dinosaur who's got tons of money. That's why we got so much junk in here. And they connect where, she's Johnson's the modern woman, and this other lady chose this horse to, have a stable life or whatever.
Hitch your wagon too.
Yeah, hitch your wagon too. And then she blurts out, like, "Why are you doing this? Like, I love him the way he is." And so she is forced to admit, and out of just the ridiculousness of it. And then that's like the accelerant, so that hurries it up the story, that like, we've made the first move, but how do we, like, she has to come out with it too, that I think his like groping hands is like, "I want to be with you," but she doesn't, she can't. But then the faith guy pulls it out of her, or that situation.
The situation did. Well, she's fool me once. She's not gonna, even though he's blind, she probably could safely feel that he would love her because he can't see her horrible birthmark. But she is once bitten, twice shy. She won't commit. But then when she does, then it's okay. And I guessed that his groping for her indicated that he didn't just want her, and that he was willing to try and, get his eyes fixed, meant that somehow that he loved her. But I think I probably missed the cues. That's me.
Yeah, he says something else too, like, I want to try a little humiliation, or like maybe I want to dabble in some kind of stupidness, and she's like, you don't know what you're talking about, or she gets prickly at that, like, what are you talking about? You don't even know. But then the funny part, one comment that was good, when she finally wants to talk about her birthmark, she pulls off her dress and says, "You can't see it, you silly fool. The whole bloody Hebrides, the whole plate of liver." And so, the Hebrides are like a islands that are off of like Scotland or something.
Hebrides, right. So it's not solid. We know that it's got jagged edges and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
we know that it's liver colored. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was funny writing. And then the final line is where she says she was suspicious that Smith had told Armitage about her before she had told him, because she told the Smith guy, like, I love him. But then Armitage says, I knew all the time, from the beginning. I knew everything about you.
Yeah. Well,
and I thought that was like, it seems like a romantic thing to say, but I feel like he's like joking. Like, I knew.
Oh, I don't know. I think that, he's supposed to be this great judge of character, right? One of the first scenes is she goes with him to this guy's house, and then she stays with the car. He goes in and he has to make a decision of whether or not to lend him money or something like that. And he could tell just by talking to him. He was such a superb judge of character. So I think he did know she had something, but he didn't know exactly what. And of course he can't see what it is, except that the scars are not just external, the scars are internal as well.
Yeah, I thought it was just a little humorous line, because of course her comment back, the story ends, but what her comment back was like, you didn't know anything. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about? So I thought that was a funny half intimacy. Like,
it is really intimate. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew what was going to happen. It's like, and she's like, what are you talking about? You didn't know anything till you fell in that pool. So then it's now we're in it. But then the story ends. And that's when I was like, oh, this short story format is something here that I had never ever thought of before. Because I thought always short stories was like for elementary school.
I know you did.
Or little kids or something.
But sometimes they don't have enough. Like, I don't think this Pritchett has enough for a novel, because he doesn't have depth. But he's good at these little vignettes. He's good at these anecdotal expressions. His favorite, I did a little bit of reading online. His favorite story is When My Girl Comes Home. And that also happens to be his longest one, the one about Hilda, who came home after World War II. And, everybody had one picture of her, and she came home and she had a very different experience. She wasn't she wasn't where they thought she was. She was very comfortable during the war, and that's his favorite story. And I think he does write women fairly well, except that there still is not enough development. Even in a short story, there are ways to develop. And it's not just adding details, which I find what he did.
I like, that was another good one. This I wrote down as well. This is like if each one of these stories is an exercise in like maneuvering or navigating, I thought this is an exercise in just managing like 3 times as many characters as he usually does, because there's like seven characters or something.
A lot of characters. I didn't know how exactly they were related. I think for the first time ever, I tried to draw kind of a family tree here to try and figure out the relationships with all these people. But what's important is that what's important about it is not exactly who's who, but how everybody is in everybody else's pocket, and how everybody is in everybody else's business, and how this street in London, the people that live on this street knew her from childhood, knew what kind of woman she was, knew what kind of girl she was, and knew what kind of woman she would become, and worked very long and hard to locate her after the war and bring her home or get her home. And while they believed that she had been held prisoner in a Japanese torture camp, in fact, she was married to a Japanese officer and had a pretty comfortable life during the war. So a lot of these stories are also about expectations unmet, or the irony of the expectation that is not what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, like it's so much to like manage. Like you got Hilda, and she, I think, is a single daughter of a Mrs. Johnson, who is old and like, frail, I guess.
Yes.
Then you got cousins.
Yep.
And you got Jack Draper, who is the youngest. And he's a guy, but he's knocked down a peg because he married a northerner, which I had to research that, like, London is London, that's the place to be, and so northerner is like kind of the the no man's land or whatever. So they comment on how his wife is from the north. And then you got I think Constance, who's another sister. She's a teacher doing good, but she's not married, I think, and with this kind of scoundrel
Mr. Williams
dude.
Yeah, he's
Bill Williams,
yeah, he's
whose
horrible.
name I guess is William Williams, like, which also knocks her down a bit, I guess. And then you got but then you got her aunts, Mrs. and Mr. Fulmino, and I'm like, well, he's a foreigner if he's like Italian or something.
Right.
Like, well,
Right.
what's that about? Like, but they're kind of a family, and he's funny because he thinks he's so effective and efficient, but really he's like not, like not really. There's one of the parts I even laughed in the book where, well, anyway, we'll get to that, but yeah, so Hilda, they think she's dead, but suddenly she comes back after the war is over by way of India, Singapore, Japan, Hawaii, and 2 husbands later, she's back home and has 2 other gentlemen calling on her.
Yep.
And the story unfolds of like, oh, she's actually like full of shit, and it seems she's just siphoning money away from her mom until she dies, and then kind of encouraging or stealing away Constance's, boyfriend, luring him away so people turn against her. And then the narrator is a character, is a guy called Fraser, who's the assistant of Mr. Fulmino. And that was kind of funny that the narrator had to be a person, because he's kind of a nothing guy.
He's another outsider. And he's contemplating joining this family, right? He's dating Iris. Iris, was it, I think?
Yeah.
So he's a little bit more objective viewpoint. And, he's our lens, right? And so Hilda's like, I think they would say something like she's no better than she needs to be, right? I think she liked the men, is what they would say about Hilda. When the two men come in and move something or bring her luggage or something like that, and when they leave, and when she says, oh, that younger short one was kind of good looking, wasn't he? Then they said, oh, our Hilda's back. So she had an appreciation for the men, like the men.
Yeah, she was charming. Yeah, so if there was another character in the skeleton one, there's commenting on like legs and thighs, and the other story, the sister about dresses and clothing. This one, like Hilda could just by her face and mysteriousness, her like mystique could just reel in people.
Yeah. She knew how to attract benefactors, as it were. Yeah. Yeah.
And and so she says one thing, where's this guy
Faulkner.
who's gonna come or take you away? And she just busts out like, well, maybe it was a case of ships that pass in the night. And that's just such a like surely you mean you just knew each other kind of, but wait, what do you mean? So just when she throws that out there, it's kind of like she's just screwing with even her own family. Like what?
Yeah. But she's the realistic. Everything that she said was true. And when you said ships that pass, when they say ships that pass in the night, that means there was a romantic encounter, but there was no commitment. So it was like a one night stand, or that's sort of what it means, a short term romance. And he was there were two men, Faulkner and who I forget the name of the other one.
Gloucester.
One of them was going to write a book about her. Well, it turns out,
oh yeah,
he did write a book. It just wasn't about her. It was about Hinkham Street, where they're all from. And she was pursued by this Bill Williams, and it's because she's got a reputation, because she's not better than she needs to be, that he thought she was fair game. And I think this is my interpretation, of course, because he's a bit of a scoundrel. And then the whole family thinks she's kind of stealing Bill Williams away from Constance, but really she just wants to get away from him. And then he ends up stealing all her stuff.
Oh, I thought that was a lie. I thought, she was moving out because the landlord said she gave her notice and she's moving out.
She was going to sneak off, get away from him. But then he went with his pals and cleaned her out.
I thought he was the movers to
No, he's
move
not.
them.
No, he's a bad guy.
I thought she was playing everyone. Like she's so deep. This I thought was very Seinfeld. Like she's so deep in the lie that she just has to keep going deeper and deeper.
No, because later Bill Williams was picked up by the police. No, he's a bad guy.
Is that right? Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
And he robbed her.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. It does say that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he robbed her. She was trying to get away from him because he was pursuing her. And I think the reason he was pursuing her is because she had a reputation as kind of a loose woman. And he probably had a hard time in the war, and she had an easy time in the war, and that might have colored his interpretation as well. But she lands on her feet. He does. He steals from her, but she does get away, and she hooks up or connects with Mr. Gloucester. He does write the book. She lands okay. She lands on her feet.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So that's why that one's about expectations, and people's interpretations are not what they think they are. Their interpretations are often wrong. There's a lot of irony going on there. The neighborhood girl. When my girl comes home, well, who's saying this? Whose girl is it? Is she? It doesn't say when our girl comes home, because kind of the whole family. When my girl comes home, I didn't quite understand, who's taking possession of her. And she does see to her mother. Her mother dies. Her mother was frail. She sort of stayed alive until Hilda came home, and then, she died, and Hilda did take care of her, and Hilda did work. She got a job, and she cleaned up after herself and all that stuff. So
it's almost like I'm realizing that because when she comes back, the newspaper wants to talk to her and says like, oh, how horrible was your time? And she kind of like, I think plays into it, or she's like running all these stories that everyone's like, what? And maybe this story is kind of a play on how we want to believe like the sensational thing. Like there's
that's what it's about, because she readily says, no, I was married to Mr. Singh, and then I was married to Mr. Kobayashi. What's his name? Shinji Kobayashi. And so the people that had been writing these letters to try and follow her, they didn't know. They thought Kobayashi was a place. They didn't realize that it was the name of her husband. They're just kind of ignorant, and they're creating this myth. So she became mythological due to their own storytelling.
Yeah, and how you're like, yeah, and how the writer, he just navigates what really happened and what we think is kind of happening and what we want to think happened,
Mhm.
where you're just like, I don't even know what's going on. Um, but one line that really captures, like, I thought of the movie, the Coen Brothers movie called Burn After Reading. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't.
It's in Washington D.C. where people find like a disc of some CIA worker's memoirs, but because
Oh, okay.
it's marked as that, they think it's spy stuff, and um, it's all these characters suspicious of each other, but they're all ignorant to what's actually going on. They're all like running around each other, but nobody actually knows. So I thought of that movie, and yeah, again, that Mr. Fulmino husband thinks he's so effective, and but once Bill Williams and Constance or start breaking up or something, um, they don't like Hilda anymore, and the wife says, "She doesn't come near me," said Mrs. Fulmino. "No," Mr. Fulmino said sadly, "after all we've done."
Mhm.
I thought that was so funny. Like, you haven't done anything. Like, you didn't.
Yeah. Well, they wrote all those letters, and so they think they were responsible for bringing her home. But in fact, she didn't need anybody to be responsible for her. She had an easier time during the war, and she got herself home.
Yeah, so he's the best profile for an audience where like you've even like confused yourself. Like you're
Mhm.
delusional about
Right.
your own role in this bigger scheme.
Yeah. It's image and reality, and that's the same similar theme that's going on with the sisters and the caged bird. And that's why they're caged birds. They're trapped in their own mythology. They're trapped in their own habits. They're trapped in the influence of the people around them, or they're trapped in the ways that they have to um, survive.
Yep.
And when my girl comes home, that's like 50 pages. That's really long.
Oh, it
It
is. Oh,
it's really long. Yeah.
how much time we got? We got oh my god, 47 minutes. Well, let's see. There's so many ones, but I could probably. So you did My Girl Comes Home. I'm gonna do The Spree, number 13,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
which was
Okay.
about an old dinosaur just getting away from his kids, and I'm gonna go get a haircut. And he
Yep.
goes on the adventure of a lifetime.
Yeah.
And he goes out, goes to haircut, realizes, why did I come here? Nobody cares about me. Nobody remembers me. My regular guy is gone, and I guess I forgot. And it says, the quote is, "There'll be nothing for it but to return home. He'd drag his way to the inevitable bus stop of defeat and stand, as so many Londoners do, with surrender on their faces."
Yes,
So
that was a great line. I have to admit that was a great line.
I do that all the time where I'm like, why did I come? Why did I come here? Why did I even come out to this place? And but then what happens is he wants to call his friend, but when he dials the number, he dials his old home number, from which he,
Mhm.
of course, is the number one memorized number in his mind. But then some other person picks up and he realizes, oh, I sold that house. I don't even live there. Who am I calling? What am I doing here? And
And my
has
wife is dead. Yeah, that's important. And I'm a widow. My wife is dead.
yeah, he's a shock. Well, he has a shock that he's losing his mind. He's like, oh my god,
Mhm. Mhm.
I thought I had it together, but I don't know. So then he stumbles away and gets shoved into a bar where young people are partying, and he wants to explain himself because he's doesn't know why he's there, and people just take in that he has a flower in his jacket and get him a drink, and then suddenly their bus comes and they all kind of climb onto it. And at this point, I'm like, oh, they're all just going on the same public bus. And then he helps a lady get on because the young people won't help her, and then they all jump on. So he gets shoved into the bus, still holding his like drink, and he's just so like confused, like, what am I doing here? He wants to get off. Sorry, I'm not meant to be on here. And the guy's like, sit down, we're moving. And he's like, all right,
Yeah.
and then sits down. And then the writer squeezes in a mini dream. He falls asleep on the bus
Mhm.
as an old person does. And you know, And he wakes up, he's alone, and then just by chance finds a connection with this other lady whose husband also died, and she is, and this is what I mean. Like each one of these stories is song-like. That there's a point in the song that's like that's the good part. That's the good part of the song,
Oh,
and
okay.
he just admits, I came out to get a haircut, wound up in a bar, and I just got on this bus, and I don't even work for this company that I guess rented this bus, and I don't know what party you're talking about. I don't know who your husband is. I don't know anything about anything. And the lady's like, "You just got on here? You what?" And so, yeah, she likes that, and
Mm-hmm.
and again, if this book was like, I'm like, we got a live one here with this guy who's just like, you know, I don't know. How do you do that? How do you think to write about this? How do you imagine? I also don't want to think all these stories, they're not autobiographical. He just heard of something or
Yeah, I
heard
think
somebody
so.
say something. He's like, "Oh, that's a good story. That should be a
He's
story." And
well, he's a great observer, I think. I think the first one about the leather guy, young man apprentice to a leather goods in Paris, that is autobiographical because he did that. His father was apparently awful, and he took him out of school and sent him over, I guess, to France to do this, and so that's autobiographical. Um, but I think he's very observant, and I think he's always, thinking of, he's seeing all these details, and then how could I work that into a story? They're so varied, they're so different, and yet, a lot the same. That I think he's a typical writer. Always, everything is grist for the mill. Everything he sees is probably carries around a notebook and writes things down.
yeah, there was another funny like little punch when he's on the bus. He's kind of like getting some laughs. He's getting some like traction with these random people, and he
Mm-hmm.
thinks to himself, "What a lark! What a thing to tell them at home. Guess what? Had a free ride. Cheek,
Mm-hmm.
my boy." He'd say to his son, "That's what you need. Let me give you a bit of advice. You'll get nowhere without cheek." And
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard of cheeky means kind of, well, like a little bit of brazen like
Yeah.
boldness to
Yeah. Yeah.
not care, but
Chutzpah. Chutzpah.
I've never heard of it as the noun as cheek.
Oh yeah, you have to have
Only the
cheek.
adjective is
Yeah.
cheeky.
Yeah.
Oh, here she says, "You've got nerve." And he said, "Sick of sitting at home, weighing I've been living with my daughter-in-law since my wife died." And that's when she's like, "Oh, here's a good part." Another good part. He says, he had a load of what people called boring things which he could not say. He had loved his wife. She had bored him. It had become a bond.
Mm-hmm.
What he needed was not friends, for since so many friends had died, he had
Mm-hmm.
become a stranger, needed another stranger.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting, actually. Yeah. Yeah. But then
And
where does
he
this
says,
go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
Well, the boring part means he's like, yeah, well, who am I don't have someone to dump all my boring stuff on because friends don't actually care. And you're like, wow, that's kind of true. Yeah, friends don't care about that stuff. So he needed a stranger, and so then later talking about intimacy with groping of the hands or revealing of a birthmark. This is one his intimacy is something. I had a dream about a dog. That was his like line in the water. If she's gonna scoop it up and be take that in as his wife would have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
It, the trouble with the story, though, is where does this spree take them? She takes a well, come on, stay on the bus. You need to enjoy this. Go ahead. It's all right. Stick it to the man kind of idea. Go ahead. It's all right if you go along. And maybe you'll be interested. Then he tells him about it. He tells her about his friend and how he suggested that he buy a house by the seaside. Well, yeah, come and look at my house. Maybe you'll buy my house. So again, it's transactional. It's not like she kind of cheers him on a bit, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, you're having a good time. Go ahead, stick it to the owners of this company. They're not running it right anyway. And, and then get off at the station in Brighton, and then I'll drive you to my house. You can look at it. Maybe you want to buy it. So, it's reduced to maybe I can use this guy now instead of she applauds his daring to get on this bus and try to carry it off. And then she turns it into, what can I use him for? Well, maybe he'll come and maybe he'll buy my house.
I didn't think that. I thought that was her saying, like, how do I get him to come over, like, and just hang out longer? Like, we can't just ride we can't. We're old. We have to be somewhere. So how do I kind of invite this stranger into my house?
Oh, you thought that was kind of code. Oh, you thought that was kind of code. All right. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's like, well, all right. He's like, he also, like, the narrator says how he lies about stuff. I'm going to try this little lie here. I'm going to see, maybe this will work. And then, yeah, she throws out, I'm going to sell it for this much. And he's like, that's way too much. And he's like, he's not even trying to buy a house. Like, what is he talking about? He doesn't even know his phone number, or I don't even know it. So it's all just that the bickering is what he was after. He was like, I want that. That's where he feels useful, is being reasonable and correcting being like the straight man, or being the pillar who corrects people, and he likes it when she flexes back on him about something.
All right. But then he goes home and he keeps this whole encounter secret.
Yeah, that's good too.
And so what I thought, that was like, this is just something for himself. He's not going to share this.
Yeah.
They'll never let him out of the house again. If he did.
Yeah, that was yeah, he's convincing. Every character he writes, I'm like, I believe this person is real but fiction. It's crazy.
Yeah. I thought the characters were realistic, and I think that's what I meant when I decided that they were adult stories. They're not fantastical characters. They're not, all good or all bad. They're all a mixture. And but they don't. But it's just a little bit too, I guess, anecdotal for me. The stories don't go anywhere. That was my problem.
The one final thing about the last story, the chain smoker, was the one that made the least sense of all to me. But it's almost like as a book, he put that one last, confident that he's like, I've built enough credibility that they're gonna take this one too. And I read that one being like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what happened, but I think I still liked that one. Like, it's almost like he confidently threw that in, knowing that, yeah, the last story can kind of, like in a movie or show, like the last part is what's critical. If you think like, well, that was weird, I did not like that book, kind of like Fahrenheit 9/11, like, what the hell? Why did I read this? But he put that one in, and it was so, I don't know what happened, but he's like, yep, you're going to take it and you're going to like it. Because
because it was predicated on a web of total lies. This guy, this chain smoker with his coughing, just lied and lied and lied to get this girl out of the guy's hair, to take her off his hands. And you may be right, because if you've read this far, you read the last one, you'll buy in. I've got you.
Yeah, that's what happened. And then it makes me go to the first one, and this will be my final thing. The first one was about, he's like this, he's got a dude who's working in leather in Paris. He wants to be a writer, and he just like sucks. People laugh at him because his French sucks. He's British. He's an outsider. And there's some woman who kind of flirts with the dudes at the leather works. And a pack of material falls in the river or something, so they got to fish it out. And then he falls into it too. And then, she has to take care of him, change her clothes, but he's never seen a woman before, never been a woman, and he gets a little excited. And then you're like, what is this? And then, she wants to like seduce him, and he doesn't know what to do. And what's crazy is that somehow a story he had written was about a murderer or something, or some kind of murder, and that it I don't really remember because it was the first
Yes,
story, but once I read this,
he told her a story, and that kept her captivated.
yeah.
So then he could know he was a storyteller at heart, because that's what kept her interested. Mm-hmm.
But then she says, once I caught sight of her eyes, the pupils had disappeared, and there were only the blind whites, and she cried out, kill me," from her twisted mouth. And it was just like, this is so crazy. Like, she's into him because of this murder thing, but then she's like, oh, kill me too. Like, she wants to be involved. She wants not only is she's like captivated by this, crazy story, but she's, oh yeah, now kill me. Like, she wants to enter the story. And I thought, going back to that first story, it's like that was his take on like pulp fiction of a seductress boy, sexual tension, murder, whatever.
Initiation.
Yeah.
He does lose his virginity. Yeah.
Yeah, like coming of age, whatever. And then he's like, and then V.S. Pritchett's like, okay, now that that's out of the way, now that I've parodied what people think is good or what they like, now I'm going to give you like your medicine. Now I'm going to like school you on some things. So I thought that was funny, where the first story was kind of typical stupidness or typical, I think, pulpness. And then the last one was just his own style of just ambiguous shortness. And you've gone the full journey.
Okay, you give him more credit than I do. I'll tell you, talking about books with you is always interesting because you do see things that I don't, and it's always enlightening. And you always give them the benefit of the doubt. I know I'm more critical, and well, not necessarily. Like, you're hard on things, and then I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. But I do enjoy talking about books with you, Joe, because you give, you have insights that are valuable and educational and worthwhile. So I appreciate that. I appreciate, and our age difference and sex difference is also gives a more interesting rendition for these discussion on these stories. So that's all good.
It's thanks to this new reading style. I read online, take notes, screenshot quotes, highlight them with the highlighter in the program, and then print them out into a booklet, and then circle and re-circle and highlight things again. So it's this total digital, back to paper, pretty like multi editing style, which just like finally penetrates my mind. Which,
you get several passes with the material, and so more and more gets embedded, and more gets churning around in there for you to be able to come up with conclusions and understanding. Yeah,
and then the final document is the podcast. So it's like, it's just like, you can't. Until the future, I don't know how you can more thoroughly
mine it,
read. And I never had an interest in reading really as a student. I thought like,
oh well,
why do we still do this? We've got internet is coming. We've got whatever, but now it's like, yeah, books are still king.
Oh yeah. But the beauty of books is you can go in depth. You can get inside people's thoughts. And that is what I found lacking here. But I will readily admit that the subtlety may have escaped me, and it might be cultural, and it might be too subtle for me. Absolutely. But I did come away with some very strong impressions. Again, I've never ever described a book or story or anything else as being adult, but they're very adult. They're very they're kind of sophisticated, I guess, maybe, or they're treating these people as realistic. and it's not so obvious. It's not so, hammered. It is subtle. And I will admit that I may have missed some of the subtlety, but not all. I think there are a few good ones in there. What I did not find interesting or amusing were those 3 stories, Key to My Heart, Noisy Flushes the Birds, and Noisy in the Doghouse, about the aristocrats on the hill and the baker on the flat in the village, and the antics of Noisy. I didn't find those very interesting at all. I didn't understand
that. I thought those ones, it's a 3-part set. And so you're wondering, like, well, what is this part of a newspaper series he had to do, or is there's some kind of pressure to continue? Like all the other ones seem to be totally his own preference for brevity, and you get just this one little portrait of a journey. So then, but those 3 were the easiest to imagine the cameras following, where he's a baker, lives on a street, there's a cafe next to them, he has a van, drives up to this rich people's house. You can you start building the locations in your mind, because they go back and forth to them like a play or something. And so that was also interesting. I was like, oh, I don't know how he's doing it, but I'm totally imagining all these places.
Yeah. Oh, the descriptions were good. Yeah.
Same thing. A boy is taken with this like crazy couple, and we don't know why. So the main guy's mother is like captivated by wealth and legitimacy of whatever property or legacies or whatever, and so that's kind of where we're not supposed to know why these people are so crazy. Noisy, and his name's Noisy, and Sally, Mr. and Mrs. Brackett. We just get to enter their world like briefly
from afar.
The guy falls in love with her. There's a scheme where Noisy has to steal his birds back because they're getting divorced, and then it's kind of it was almost like Great Gatsby-ish, where you've got this regular guy, Nick or something, and he's like, then Gatsby lived in this enormous manse, and with this wing and the grandfather clock and all this like picturing of stuff, and then but the main guy is so boring. You're like, it's just the main guy entering and exiting this other extraordinary life. And so, I don't like The Great Gatsby at all. I'm like, this book sucks. I don't know why it's such a legendary status.
I know.
But I did think of that where, he V.S. Pritchett, I can do that too. I can take you from scene to scene and make you kind of imagine where we are and what we're doing.
Well, you appreciated his writing, and you think that these stories are sort of an exercise in this kind and that kind and the other kind of writing. And I kind of think his love of writing is a distraction from the story, and that he's a little bit too in love with his writing and a turn of phrase or, a subtle suggestion, and that it kind of gets in the way of producing a developed story. But, that's just a difference in taste.
It sounds like there are, classical works or formats where they had to fit a format with certain rules. And it's almost like when my guitar teacher explained to me, he's like, Bach is such a genius because this is the customer was the church, but a format where these dance suites where rich people would dance around the parlor or whatever hall of whatever rich house they're in. And so how do you force melody into these highly rhythmic and recognizable dance step pattern things? And he would do that. He would you could hear both this dance rhythm coming, but also these like crazy melodies and harmonies happening. And in other cases, etudes, like Chopin was a pianist. He wrote these etudes, which were supposed to train some physical mechanic of your hands on the piano, so the student can practice something. But at the same time, like these melodies or these harmonies or these maneuvers are just like effortless, even with the format necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I thought of, where like you might have an opera, which is like, I can do whatever I want. Watch me blow your mind. But that's why I like this, where it's like, well, we got this guy. He's somewhere. Something's got to happen. Like, that's why it's a short story. I mean, short. So we have to have the blind guy fall in the water. And how do we make him be vulnerable? He falls in the pool. And then how do we make her quickly reveal what she's got? And so we've got this hustler. So then she's got to come out with it. And then, so yeah, I thought those 3 stories about Noisy and the wife were not that. So he still kind of took you around, check out this village I'm building for you.
Yeah.
And other things.
That's what I found it to be, very, very similar to, English sort of village dramas or village comedies. You got all these little characters that are running around. They're all very eccentric, and they have to interact with each other. It's like Doc Martin, or it's like some other village funny village series that they just act that way. They're just kind of weird, and he's our local crazy guy.
Yeah, and that's why, like, in Dickens or whatever, everyone's clean, and he tries to explain their suits, but then the only other characters are like, and he was horrible. He was dirty, hunched, like, sloping or whatever. Like,
pretty stereotypical. Like, yeah.
And so this guy in these shorts, he has to quickly explain. Noisy was crazy. He's like twitching, his eyes, and he's got a crazy car, and she's, I don't know. I like the brevity and the urgency to do it, get in and get out, like those etudes.
That's a short story. Well, it's and
format.
When you're talking about format and form, I'm thinking of sonnets, poetry and sonnets, and you have this rigid form and the rigid rhymes. You have 16 lines, and you have rigid rhyme scheme, and you have to, present a problem, elaborate, solve the problem in the couplet, kind of thing. And in a master's hands, those are really good if there's a telling phrase that really, that's it. But I didn't find that in a lot of these. I found there was meatier than I thought. I think we got a lot out of this and discussed quite a bit, but I think it doesn't have to do with long or short, because these stories are all different lengths, but it has to do with depth and development. And I appreciate depth and development more than I do vignettes and anecdotes.
I also liked the other one called The Marvelous Girl, that was so short, where he's breaking up with his wife, and she's got some, I don't know if that's supposed to be her girlfriend, like, actually just by chance. But they were at a dinner together. I thought they're together. They
went to, oh wow, I don't think he went there. I think she's an office girl. That's what my note says. Office girl, ex-wife's presentation for the art. And he's the artist that's going to be featured in this presentation, or some kind of welcoming or something like that. What I found about that one is, I thought the blackout, the whole everything, the hall blacked out, the electricity went off, everybody was thrown into chaos, and they had to sort of make their way. They found each other in the darkness, or just before the darkness, and so that was, I found, pretty contrived. However, they went to a hotel. This is one of the few couples that didn't get rebuffed, didn't get,
oh yeah.
All the other ones, she went back to Noisy, or, I have to have this girl. No, you're not, you don't get the girl, but he got the girl in this one.
Yep.
So that was kind of different.
Yeah, this one had mind-blowing lines. it says, he says about his wife, his ex-wife, more than 2 years had gone by since he and his wife had lived together. The marriage was one of those prickly friendships that never succeeded, to his astonishment, in turning into love, but are kept going by curiosity. It had become at once something called our situation, a duet by a pair of annoyed hands, which means two people at a piano playing together. Another music reference, piano for four hands.
Oh.
What kept them going was an exasperated interest in each other's love affairs, but even unhappiness loses its tenderness and fascination. So he's like, we were together, we're married, and we never started loving each other, which is weird. And we just, we kept it going though, but even unhappiness loses its tenderness, which is like, what is that about?
Yeah.
No, that was,
oh yeah.
Well, that's something that's beyond my even comprehension, which married people maybe I know would even my age would be like, oh yeah, I know what that means. And that's just,
I know what that means. Yeah. That's why it's so interesting that, you're younger than I am. And, that's part of what's interesting about this and relationships, and my understanding of relationships and your understanding or your experience with relationships and mine are very different. Yeah.
And I thought, this is crazy, and this is a later story, number 10, but in the stories, it felt like certain lines or passages were like, that is it, and everything else is framed around it. Like, this is the good part of the song or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought this line was like the good part of the whole book. It occurred to me because maybe it was, and maybe, he has all these stories where it doesn't work out. We broke up. We didn't, I did love him, but he killed himself. And now finally, this is the one that is seeming to work out, where he's in love with the office girl. And he writes, he was in love with the girl. The love seemed to come up from events thousands of years old. The girl herself he thought was not young, but ancient, perhaps Egyptian. The skin of her face was not rose-like, nor like bread, but like stone roughened by centuries. I am feeling love, he said. And so he has the characters say out loud, like, I am feeling love. It's just like, what?
Yeah.
That's just another just mind-blowing, you're like, what is that? What are you talking about? Where he has the character literally verbalize, like, I am feeling love.
Yes, but
right now.
So that struck you. So what struck me in this story is I'm on page 230, I have a book. It was that goodbye that did for him. It was radiant. Goodbye, half laughing, and he had seen her tongue and her even teeth as she laughed. La-na-na-na-na. He went out of the restaurant and in the leathery damp. What is leathery damp? This is very self-conscious phrasing, I think. And then the following page, the platform, what does it say? She was not on the platform with his wife. And the speakers, of course, is when he's looking for her in the hall. The director, whose voice suggested chocolate, was still thinking away. Well, how does a voice suggest chocolate? I just think it's I think this is what I mean when I say he's in love with the writing. He likes to turn a phrase. He likes to, when I saw that leathery damp, I thought, no, what exactly is leathery damp? I can't even picture it. Sometimes I can, but I think he likes a little turn of phrase.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. He is good.
Okay.
Also in that, he talked about things called mackerel skies.
Yeah.
Which I learned from another story, which means certain clouds that are like ripply across the sky.
Fish scales, yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, I was familiar with that. I think that's the same terminology in Japanese, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
So all in all, I'm glad I read it. I'm glad, but there's a reason he's under the radar. There's a reason why he has not stood the test of time. Is that he's kind of clever instead of intelligent. But I think he's perfectly nice. I think he's a nice gentleman writer. That's what I'll say.
Yep. Yeah, don't lose that book. Don't put that one on Amazon. I want that one.
Okay, I'll put this in the bookcase. All right.
And well, that's a long one. 1 hour 20. What is the next one?
The next one is, and I don't know if you can get this. It's Bob Odenkirk memoir, comedy, drama.
Wow.
Anna says you like this guy, and she went to a presentation or book signing he did. So he spoke and she got his autograph, and she said it was super, super good. He was very entertaining and interesting. And she also said that you like him, or you would like him, because he was connected to Cross.
Yeah. David
Another
Cross.
David Cross. So I recommend this one. If you can get it, you might have to buy it.
Ooh, I'll find it.
Okay, Bob Odenkirk, comedy, drama.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, he was a writer for like The Simpsons, for Saturday Night Live, and he had another HBO show called Mr. Show, which is like just unbelievably funny.
Yes, he said, yeah, and I mentioned Mr. Show. So the back flap has a blurb from Conan O'Brien and David Cross.
Yeah. Okie dokie.
That's our next one.
I'm on it.
All right. Signing off from California.
Yep. Signing off here. Thank you for listening. We will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.